signature. But no one had ever asked if she agreed. Lady Charlotte Westbrook discovered the contract in her father's study by accident. She'd been looking for a book on estate management, trying to be useful, trying to learn something that might give her purpose beyond needlework and social calls. The leather-bound volume she pulled from the shelf had papers tucked inside, and when they fell to the floor, Charlotte bent to retrieve them. That's when she saw her name. Lady Charlotte Margaret Westbrook, upon reaching her 21st year, shall wed Lord William Ashford, Duke of Hartfield. This arrangement, made in good faith between Lord Westbrook and the late Duke of Hartfield, shall be honored by both parties without exception. The date at the top was from 15 years ago. Charlotte had been 6 years old. She stood in her father's study, the contract trembling in her hands, trying to process what she was reading. She was engaged, had been engaged for 15 years. To a duke she'd never met, and no one had bothered to tell her. The study door opened. Her father entered, saw what she was holding, and went pale. Charlotte put that down. "When were you planning to tell me?" Charlotte asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the shock coursing through her. "When it became relevant," her father said. "You turned 21 in 3 months. We would have informed you then." 3 months, Charlotte repeated. "You were going to give me 3 months to prepare for marriage to a complete stranger." "The Duke is hardly a stranger. He's one of the most respected men in England." "I've never met him," Charlotte interrupted. "I don't know his face, his voice, anything about him. That makes him a stranger, father." Her father crossed to his desk, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Charlotte, this arrangement was made to secure your future. The Duke's father and I agreed that joining our families would benefit everyone involved. Everyone except me, apparently, since no one thought to ask my opinion. You were 6 years old. Your opinion wasn't relevant." "And now," Charlotte asked, "I'm 20. I have thoughts and feelings and plans for my life." "The contract is binding," her father said firmly. "Your feelings, while understandable, don't change that reality." Charlotte looked at the document in her hands, this piece of paper that had decided her entire future without her knowledge or consent. Her name was written there in her father's hand, as if he had the right to sign away her life. "Does he know?" Charlotte asked quietly. "The Duke, does he know about this contract?" "Of course, he's known since his father's death 3 years ago, when he inherited the title and all accompanying obligations. So he's known for 3 years, and I'm finding out by accident 3 months before the wedding." Charlotte set the contract on the desk carefully, as if it might shatter. "When is the wedding, father? Since apparently that's already been decided too." "The 1st of June, 3 months from today." Charlotte nodded slowly, feeling something cold and hard settle in her chest. "I see, and if I refuse?" "You can't refuse. The contract is legally binding. Refusing would destroy our family's reputation, result in substantial financial penalties, and leave you unmarriageable. You'd be dependent on our charity for the rest of your life. So I have no choice. You have the choice to accept this with grace or make everyone miserable with pointless resistance," her father said. "I recommend grace." Charlotte left the study without another word. Over the following weeks, Charlotte learned what she could about the Duke of Hartfield. William Ashford, 34 years old, inherited his title young when his father died unexpectedly, managed extensive estates in the north, rarely came to London, had a reputation for being serious and reserved. Beyond these basic facts, she knew nothing. What kind of man was he? Kind or cruel? Patient or demanding? Would he treat her as a partner or property? She had no answers, just 3 months to prepare for a life with a stranger. The Duke arrived in London 2 weeks before the wedding. Charlotte was summoned to meet him at her family's townhouse, her stomach twisted with anxiety. He stood in the drawing room with his back to the door, tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired. When he turned to face her, Charlotte's breath caught. He was handsome, but more than that, he looked tired, not physically exhausted, but worn down by something Charlotte couldn't identify. "Lady Charlotte," he said, his voice deep and carefully neutral, "I'm William Ashford." Charlotte curtsied automatically. "Your Grace." "Please sit," he gestured to the chairs, and they sat facing each other across an uncomfortable distance. Silence stretched between them. Finally, William spoke. "I imagine this situation is difficult for you, learning about our arrangements so late." "You knew I wasn't told?" Charlotte asked. I assumed you were informed years ago, as I was. When your father's letter arrived last month mentioning you'd only recently learned about the contract, I was." He paused, disturbed. "That was poorly handled." "But not poorly enough to cancel the arrangement," Charlotte said. "The contract is binding. I have obligations to my family, to the agreement my father made, as do you." "So we're both trapped," Charlotte said quietly. William's expression tightened. "That's one way to view it." "How do you view it?" Charlotte asked. "As a duty to fulfill as honorably as possible." William leaned forward slightly. "Lady Charlotte, I realize you didn't choose this marriage. Neither did I in truth, but we're both here, bound by decisions made by our fathers. The question is how we proceed." "What do you suggest?" "Mutual respect, honest communication, an attempt to build something workable within the constraints we've been given." William's gray eyes were serious. "I won't pretend this is a love match, but it doesn't have to be miserable either." Charlotte studied him, this stranger who would become her husband in 2 weeks. He seemed sincere, at least, not cruel or dismissive, just resigned like her, to circumstances neither wanted. "That seems reasonable," she said carefully. "Good," William stood. "I'll see you at the wedding then." He left and Charlotte sat alone, trying to decide if their conversation had made her feel better or worse. The wedding was small and formal. Charlotte wore white silk and felt like a ghost. William stood at the altar looking composed and distant. They spoke vows that bound them legally but meant nothing emotionally. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, William kissed Charlotte briefly, a cool, perfunctory touch that promised nothing. They were married. The journey to Hartfield Hall took most of the day. William was polite but distant, pointing out landmarks occasionally, but making no attempt at real conversation. Charlotte watched the countryside pass and wondered if this cold silence would define their entire marriage. Hartfield Hall was imposing, all stone and history in rooms that felt designed to emphasize how small she was. The staff greeted their new duchess with careful courtesy, and Charlotte smiled and nodded while feeling like an imposter. "Your chambers," William said, showing her to a suite of beautiful, impersonal rooms. "Mine are in the East Wing. If you need anything, inform Mrs. Davies." "Thank you," Charlotte managed. William hesitated at the door. "Charlotte, I know this isn't what you wanted. It's not what I wanted either, but we're here now and we'll make the best of it." Then he left, and Charlotte was alone in her beautiful prison. Days became weeks. Charlotte managed the household efficiently, visited tenants dutifully, fulfilled every obligation of her position. William was courteous but emotionally absent, treating her more like a competent employee than a wife. They saw each other at dinner, where they made stilted conversation about neutral topics. Afterward, William would excuse himself to his study, and Charlotte would return to her chambers alone. 1 month into their marriage, Charlotte realized she couldn't continue like this. The loneliness was suffocating. She had everything materially, but nothing that mattered. That evening at dinner, she spoke before William could excuse himself. "I need to ask you something." William looked up, surprised. "Of course. Is this it? Is this our marriage? Polite dinners and separate lives?" William set down his fork carefully. "What else would you like it to be?" "Something real," Charlotte said. "Actual conversation, genuine connection. I know we didn't choose this marriage, but we're living it anyway. Can't we at least try to make it something more than a cold arrangement?" William was quiet for a long moment. "I've been trying to give you space, to not impose on you more than necessary." "I don't want space," Charlotte said. "I want a partner, someone who actually talks to me, who values my thoughts, who sees me as more than just an obligation." "Is that what you think?" William asked. "That you're just an obligation to me?" "Aren't I?" "No," William said firmly. "Charlotte, you're my wife. You deserve better than I've been giving you. I apologize." "Then let's start over," Charlotte said. "Not as strangers fulfilling a contract, but as two people trying to build something real." William looked at her across the table, something shifting in his expression. "I'd like that." It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a beginning. They started having real conversations during dinner, about books, ideas, estate management. William began asking Charlotte's opinions and listening to her answers. Charlotte discovered William was more thoughtful than his reserve suggested. Slowly, carefully, they built friendship from duty. 3 months into their marriage, Charlotte realized she cared for William, genuinely cared. His rare smiles made her heart lift. His presence brought comfort rather than tension. 6 months in, she realized she loved him. She told him one evening in the library, her voice shaking with vulnerability. William looked at her with wonder. I love you too. I have for weeks, but I didn't think you could ever feel the same. Why not? Because I'm part of your trap, part of what was forced on you. You were, Charlotte admitted, but you've become something more, my choice within the choice I never had. William pulled her close, and Charlotte felt complete for the first time since seeing her name on that contract. A year after their wedding, Charlotte held their infant son, while William stood beside her. He'll choose his own wife, Charlotte said firmly. No contracts, no arrangements. Agreed, William said, though I can't regret ours entirely. It brought me you. And me you, Charlotte admitted, even if I never would have chosen it. You chose me eventually, William said. That matters more. Charlotte looked at her husband, once a stranger, now her partner, her love, her choice. Her name had been on